Hey guys, today I'm gonna show you how to remove, replace and test the alternator on this Honda Civic 9th generation from 2014. The alternator works together with the battery, so one of the tests is very simple. You'll need a voltmeter, just connect it on the battery terminals and it should be somewhere around 12.6 volts. Then when you start the car, the voltage should rise above 14 volts. That's because the alternator can deliver 60 amps of current, therefore the battery will take that charge immediately, and that's why it's normal to see that jump from 12.6 volts to 14.5 volts, for example. Now, one cause of a faulty alternator can be a bad battery which cannot hold the charge. So for example, if the battery initial voltage is around 12.1 volts, you start the car, the voltage jump to around 14 volts as it should, but then when you turn off the car after, let's say, 30 minutes of driving and the battery voltage is still 12.1 volts immediately after you turn off the car, then that's going to be a problem because that will put extra load on the alternator all the time, and in some cases the alternator will be the only one who provides most of the power for the car to run. So that can damage the alternator over time, especially when everything it seems to work fine, the car starts easy, since there is no need for a lot of cold cranking amps on this relatively new gasoline engine. So you can see why it's not easy to detect this before damaging the alternator. Another issue can be on the actual connectors and wirings from the alternator to the battery. So visually inspect for corrosion on both battery and the alternator. Also corrosion at the point where the alternator sits on the engine block, since that's the point where the negative terminal is connected to the car battery. Then you can do a voltage drop test on the positive wire and the negative. This is going to confirm if there is any obstruction of the current flow between these 2 points, and basically if all the current produced by the alternator will get to the battery. So this is how it works. The voltmeter will check the difference in voltage between the points where you connect the terminals of the voltmeter. So if at the alternator there is 14.8 volts and at the battery arrives 14 volts, the voltmeter will read 0.8. This is going to be the voltage drop detected by the voltmeter when you set it to 20 volts direct current. First I will remove this intake hose out of the way. With a 10mm socket, there is a bolt down here. There we go. Now we've got more space to work on down here. I'm going to remove as well this oil dipstick. On the back of the alternator, here is the positive wire which is charging the battery. Now the voltmeter is connected down there. The second terminal of the voltmeter, I'm going to connect it on the positive terminal of the battery. And now I'm going to be able to read the voltage drop once I start the car. And as you can see, we've got 0.2 volts which are lost in the connection. This is okay, it's within spec, it's not that much. Now we can do basically the same thing for the negative terminal. For the negative terminal, we've got just a little bit of voltage drop, not that much. Next, you can check to see if you have 12 volts supply to the alternator, because even though the alternator produces current, it also needs 12 volts in order to function. So unplug this connector, one of the terminals of the voltmeter with a needle probe. Go ahead and plug it in the connector, and the second terminal you can just connect it on the alternator, and with the key in the second position you should find 12 volt supply to the alternator, as you can see. Now if, let's say, the battery is holding the charge, there is no voltage drop on the wires, you found 12 volts input to the alternator, but the alternator still refuses to charge, then you'll have to replace the alternator. On some cars you will find a voltage regulator at the back of the alternator which can be replaced, but not on this type of alternator, because on this one the voltage regulator is inside. So to remove the alternator more easily, you will have to remove the intake manifold. However, it is possible to remove the alternator without removing the intake manifold as well. So the first step is to release the tension on the serpentine belt. You're gonna need a 19mm wrench, like so. Then you've got this bolt down here, it's a 12mm. Then on a positive discharge connector, there is a bolt, so with a 10mm you can undo that as well. So the nut comes out, you can see it's very clean like new. You will find also this 8mm bolt which will hold little wire harness on the alternator with this metal bracket down here, and this one down here. Right, now let's wiggle it out. There we go. There it comes out. Okay. And you can see down there, there is the voltage regulator. It's not like an exterior plastic device like this one, which can be removed and replaced. And down here you can see it's a 62 amps alternator. This is quite common for this size of the car. And down here are the contact points. I just sandpapered them a little bit. So first it's a good idea to tighten in the top bolt, and then you're going to be able to position the alternator on the second hole. It might be a lot of struggle to match the second bolt into its threads. It's not going to be possible to fit my torque wrench in here, so I'm going to estimate it by hand. Alright, so now in order to install back the serpentine belt, you'll need again the 19mm wrench, and this time use a hose clamp in order to lock it on this pin down here on the engine mount, like that. You'll need some sort of light in order to see very well the serpentine belt, how it fits on the pulleys. I've got the serpentine belt on my hand. Now what I need to do is to place it on the alternator and on this big pulley. So first place it on the alternator. Once you verify that the serpentine belt is on, then you can release this tensioner, install back the wiring harness, plug in the connector, and that's it guys, job done. I hope this information is going to be useful in your situation. If so, give this video a thumbs up, and until next time, take care, so I can see you soon.